Okay, so if you've been watching active melody lesson videos for any length of time, you've probably noticed me repeat myself when it comes to certain topics. And this week is no exception to that. I want to go back to the old topic of connecting harmonies to chord shapes. And I want you to be able to make something that sounds really pretty and melodic and thought out, and be able to understand where it's coming from, and more important than any of that, be able to access it and use it going forward when you're improvising. That's what these lessons are all about, is giving you the tools you need to be able to write your own music and improvise with this stuff. So what we're going to be looking at is a basic chord progression with a G chord, E minor, C, and a D, and we're going to be playing a pretty harmony on top of that. This is what it sounds like. So you probably noticed I played over the same group of chords 3 different times. We started down here in this region of the fretboard, then I moved up to the middle somewhere, and then I moved up higher up the neck. But I was playing those chords in each of these positions, these neighborhoods. And so that's how I like to think of the fretboard, is a bunch of neighborhoods that are all connected. And so in this video, we're going to look at 2 of the neighborhoods and what was played, and I'll explain where it all comes from. If you'd like to watch the video, the part 2 video where I go over the 3rd neighborhood, and also download the tablature for all of it, and get the MP3 jam track for all of this so that you can practice playing everything we're going to talk through. You can get those extras for this lesson by going to activemelody.com and doing a search for ML140. Okay, let's talk about this chord progression. This is a pretty basic chord progression. It's a 1 chord, which is our G chord. By the way, we're in the key of G. I should start with that. So we're going to go from a G and walk it down to an E minor. E minor is your relative minor. It's the relative minor of G. It's also your 6th chord. So we go from our 1 chord down to the 6th chord. And then we're going to play the 4 chord, which is C, and then the 5 chord, which is D. And that's it. So it's a 1 6 4 5. That's the chord progression. Pretty basic. We're playing this in the key of G. There's no open strings that I'm using in everything I'm about to show you, so that means you can transpose everything you're going to learn here and play it in any key. And I'm doing that intentionally so that you can have these tools to reuse in other things. So the first thing I want you to do is think about that G chord. That's the first thing we're going to play over. And we're going to picture it here using the E shape. That's where we bar on the 3rd fret. And I want you to look at just strings 2 and 3. Little harmony there. These 2 notes. That's all we're going to get out of this chord shape. We're not going to play any of the rest of the notes for now. We're just going to look at these 2. And here's how I want you to put your fingers down. I want you to use your middle finger on the 2nd string and your ring finger on the 3rd string, because I want you to hammer on to that 3rd like this. That's a simple little technique, but you can get a lot of mileage out of it, especially if you add a little vibrato to it. So all I'm doing is I'm playing like this G sus2, and I'm hammering on to that major 3rd with my ring finger. So just playing strings 2 and 3. Now watch this. This is the little embellishment off of that idea. And so after that, I lift my ring finger, and then I come down here with my pinky on the 5th fret 4th string, play that note, which is a G note, and then back to where we started. So these notes are just notes out of my G major scale in this neighborhood, in this hand position. And I know that any of these notes from my G major scale are going to work because all the chords we're using are in the chord family for the key of G. So over the G chord then, now the song is on the E minor, right? And I play this. Look at this. Let me show you what I'm doing, and then I'll explain what it is and why it's working. So I'm staying in the same neighborhood. I'm not jumping all over. I'm just trying to stay right here. I'm going to do a pull off between the 3rd fret and the 2nd fret on the 1st string. And then I'm going to do this little stair step shape. 2nd fret 1st string, 3rd fret 2nd string, 4th fret 3rd string. See that little stair step? And so when you add the pull off to that, it goes like this. Simple little idea. But why does that work over that E minor? Now you may want to pause the video and just quiz yourself on this, because this is not an E minor triad. In fact, it's a B minor triad. Why does that B minor triad work over an E minor chord? When you superimpose the B minor triad over that E minor chord, why does that work? Well, I'll assume you've paused and quizzed yourself on this. But the reason for that is, when you play this B minor triad on top of an E minor chord, you're actually creating a new chord. You're creating the sound of an E minor 9 chord. These notes are what notes that would be in your E minor 9 chord. So what you're actually creating is a different chord when you do that. And I did that in all 3 of these positions. I created that E minor 9 sound just so that you can see how it sounds. First of all, you got to kind of train your ear. It's not super obvious. That E minor sound is obvious, but this has more of like a Pink Floyd Animals kind of sound. I sort of relate it to that. It's just a different kind of vibe, but I love how pretty that sounds and how that works against that E minor. And I wanted to include that in this lesson to give you some ideas for some chord substitutions like this. So now the song is going to go to the C chord, and I played this. Now why does that work over the C, and what is that I'm playing? Well, I'm barring the first 2 strings here on the 3rd fret, and I'm hammering onto the 5th fret 2nd string. Now what is that? Why does that work over the C? Well, I'm thinking about this. My C chord using the A shape. And here's the top part of that chord, right? That little triad there. So look at strings 1 and 2. When I do that hammer on, that's what I'm building. I'm building the top part of that C chord using the A shape. And so the takeaway for you on this is this chord shape. Forget which chord we're playing, just look at the shape. You can always come up here to the top of it and do a little hammer on there, and you get a pedal steel kind of sound that represents this chord. Hopefully a light bulb goes off for some of you. I've said this probably, honestly, like 100 times in lesson videos, but sometimes it's that 101st time of hearing it that it sticks with you, and you go, oh, now I get it. So if I'm playing a song with let's say, do a song with an E chord in it, in E major, I could go. You can hear that, right? And you can see why that's working now. It's using this same concept. It works over any chord. You just have to remember the chord shape and the idea connected to the shape. So from the beginning we have, here's the C. So after I played this, I kept that bar down on strings 1 and 2 on the 3rd fret, and then I come down to the 5th fret 3rd string with my ring finger and played this note, and then down to this note, and these are notes in my G major scale. Remember we talked about, right? And then I came down to here. That's where we started. That was that G sus2, but now it means something different because the song, the chords behind it are playing a D chord. And if I look at strings 2 and 3 out of this D chord, those are the same 2 notes that I played in the beginning to hammer on into my G chord, right? That was my G sus2. But it represents something different now that the chord underneath it is a D chord. But now that's just the root and 5th out of my D chord. And then after I played strings 2 and 3 to represent my D chord, I put my ring finger down here on the 5th fret 4th string and just played this. And those are 3 notes out of my D chord using the C shape, right? So I just kept these 2 fingers down and added this note. And you can see then how everything we played there had a purpose, and it sounded melodic because we were just pulling ideas out of those chord shapes. It wasn't like I was even really thinking about a scale. There were a few scale notes used, but that's not where my brain was. My brain was picturing the chords and what I can do with these chords. All right, so now that same chord progression is just going to repeat itself. It's going to go back to the G. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move up to a different neighborhood. So we started with our G chord here, right? Now we're going to come up to our G chord up here, more kind of like in the middle of the neck. This is my G chord using the C shape. We're not going to make this chord shape. I'm just showing you where we're at, which neighborhood we're playing in. But what I am going to play out of that chord shape are these two notes, strings 4 and 2. And to play that, I'm just barring the first 4 strings here on the 7th fret, ring fingers on the 9th fret, 4th string, and then my middle finger is on the 8th fret, 2nd string. And I play those 2 notes, and then watch this. So all I did there was, I played those 2 notes which represented my G chord, right? Out of the C shape. But then listen to this. My middle finger gets lifted, and I'm going to play strings 4, 2, 3, 4. But why is that? What am I doing there? That sounds like a minor chord, right? Well, it is. It's a minor triad. It's a B minor triad. Does that ring a bell? We talked about that same thing down here, right? But now we're playing it up here. Here's my B minor chord using that E shape. So hopefully you're seeing, okay, yeah, and I'm doing that to stay in the same neighborhood. We don't want to have to jump all over the fretboard each time. So we have that representing my G. I went ahead and played the B minor even though the song was still technically on the G. Now this is where it gets really interesting because that B minor triad that we used over the E minor the first time, now I'm using it even though the song is still on the G. So what does that mean if I play a B minor triad over a G? Listen to this. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound like a minor chord. That sounds pretty. That's a major chord. That's a major 7 chord. That's a G major 7 chord. So if I play my B minor triad over the G chord, I'm now creating the sound of a G major 7. So, I mean, when I started realizing this stuff, it completely blew my mind. I had to like really break it down, go, there's no way inside of a G major 7 chord is a minor triad, but it is, it's in there. It's also in the middle of a 6 chord and a 9 chord, which we'll look at the 6 chord next. So when we come up to this neighborhood, we have this to represent the G chord, that to still represent the G chord, and then the song walks down to the E minor, and I stayed on that B minor. So it's kind of cool that I can play that B minor triad over the G chord, even as it walks down to the E minor. I can just stay on that B minor triad, and I can just sort of color both of those chords in different ways. It's like mixing paints. That's kind of what, actually that's a good analogy. It's like taking a little bit of yellow and adding it to a red, and now we're adding a little bit of yellow to green. It's going to create 2 different new colors that weren't there before. So then the song goes to the 4 chord, which is our C, and so I'm asking myself, where's my nearest C? I'm in this neighborhood. I don't want to jump down to this one. Where is one here? Oh yeah, there's one right here. There's a C chord using the E shape. The answer to that question is never more than 1 fret away from where you're at. That kind of blew my mind when I realized that too. So the answer to the chord, like where's the nearest whatever, it's always just within 1 fret of where you're at for any chord. So that's another little thing. I'll put a lesson up on the screen if you want to check out more about that. But anyway, I'm going to picture my C chord here using the E shape, but I'm not going to play that whole chord. I'm just going to play this to represent it. This little hammer on. It looks very similar to what we did down here for the C, right? Now when we played it down here, that was over the A shape. Now it's over the E shape. But the same concept works in terms of shape. It's a different sound, obviously, but it's that kind of pedal steel lick. So off of this E shape, there's my C note, C chord. I've got this. And then I can come down here with my middle finger to the 9th fret, 3rd string. And I'm just playing the C major triad there, the top 3 strings out of that C chord using the E shape. But that's just a way to build that chord. And I love that. I use that all the time. If I'm playing an A chord. See what I'm talking about? You can use these little shapes to represent your chords. And that's what improvising is. It gets away from the being super literal. And I know some of your brains are wired to be super literal. Mine is too in some ways. And you have to really kind of break that apart. And we have representatives now that represent our chords. That represents a C. And then when the song goes to the D, I play this. One finger, just barring strings 2 and 3 on the 7th fret. Why does that represent a D? And the reason for that is, there's my D chord using the A shape. Here's my D chord using the G shape. But in both of those is a triad here, right? On the 7th fret. And so if I look at just strings 2 and 3, that's what I'm playing. And I slid into it. So that's what I ended up playing for my C representative to my D representative. So hopefully by this deconstruction here, you're starting to see how this works. I'm not thinking really about scales, even though there's some notes from a scale. I'm really just picturing chord shapes. I'm picturing G, C, D. And what can I do with that? What kind of representatives can I pull out of that? There's that B minor triad, which represents different things to those different chords. And I've got my C and my D. Okay, well hopefully you've had a few breakthroughs in this video. Leave a comment and let me know what those are. I love reading those. I do read through all the comments. It helps other people when we share this stuff. So let me know kind of where your breakthrough was. And if you've got a question about anything or something wasn't clear, make sure you leave that as well. I like to know all that stuff. All right, so that's where I'm gonna wrap up this part 1 video. Come join us for part 2, where we'll look at the last of these 3 neighborhoods. And remember, as a premium member, you'd also have access to the tablature for all of it and the MP3 jam track so that you can practice playing everything we talked through here. All right, we'll see you in part 2.